Welcome to RK English Stories. Subscribe this channel now to improve your English daily and like this video. Now let's jump into the story. Once upon a time, in a small American town, there lived a baker who had a shop. Now, this baker wasn't exactly known for his kindness. He had a knack for giving his customers just the right amount of bread for their money, and a smile from him was as rare as a sunny day in Seattle. But, let me tell you, he was one heck of a baker. His bread was so soft, it was like a cloud on a plate. And his cakes? Oh, they were a piece of heaven. People from all corners of town flocked to his shop. You could follow your nose down the street, lured by the irresistible aroma of the baker's magical bread and mouth-watering cakes. Some folks couldn't even wait to get home. They paid for their bread and started munching away right there in the shop. The cakes, oh, the cakes. They were so delicious that even the town mice were rumored to throw cake parties when the moon was high. Yes, this baker was a baking wizard, but, you see, not everyone ventured inside. Some folks just stood outside, their noses pressed against the glass, taking in the delightful sight and smell. Now, our baker wasn't too pleased about this. Their stomachs are feasting on the smell of my bread. I'm practically giving them a free lunch, and what do I get for all my hard work? He grumbled to himself. Little did he know that those window shoppers were spreading the word far and wide about the wonders inside his bakery. And so, the baker's fame spread. Not just for his delectable treats but also for the amusing spectacle of folks salivating outside his window. And as the saying goes, all's fair in bread and cakes. On a chilly winter morning, our not-so-jolly baker found himself grumbling away in his shop. No cheerful tunes were escaping his lips, only complaints about the early hour, the biting cold, and whatever else happened to cross his mind. Amidst this symphony of discontent, he glanced up and spotted a young man outside the window. Now, this young man, clad in a weathered coat, was gazing at the baker's bread with hungry eyes. A smile played on his face as he inhaled the irresistible aroma of fresh bread. When the baker saw him, oh, he felt more than just a twinge of anger. That thief outside my shop is filling his stomach with the smell of my bread. A free breakfast for him, and I get nothing for my hard work. Stealing my smells, that's what he's doing, fumed the baker, but the young man, blissfully ignorant of the baker's ire, stood there with closed eyes, happily savoring the scent of the freshly baked bread. Now, that was the last straw for our disgruntled baker. He marched across the shop, swung the door open, and bellowed at the man, "Pay me." "Pay you for what?" asked the bewildered young man. "For the smells you've stolen," retorted the baker. "But I've stolen nothing. I'm just enjoying the air," protested the hungry youth. "Air is free. It's not free when it's saturated with the smells from my shop," declared the incensed baker. "Pay me now, or I'll call the police." With that threat hanging in the air, the baker seized the young man by his coat and dragged him through the snow to the judge's house. They knocked on the door, and after what felt like an eternity, the judge, clad in his night clothes, opened it. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and he wasn't expecting such an early visitor. The baker, still fuming, pointed an accusing finger at the young man. "This man is a thief. He stole the smells from my shop." The judge, a bit taken aback, simply sighed and said, "Come in and tell me your story." And so began the curious case of the stolen smells, with the judge as the unexpected referee in this fragrant fiasco. "Give me a moment to dress myself," requested the judge, disappearing into his house. After a brief interlude, he emerged, ready to face the fragrant fiasco that awaited him. He ushered the baker and the young man inside, where they gathered around a large table. "All right, spill the beans, baker, you start," instructed the judge, settling into his seat. He listened attentively as the baker launched into his tale about the hungry man who allegedly pilfered all his delightful smells. The judge continued to absorb the story, giving the young man an opportunity to present his side of the aromatic argument. When both parties had poured out their olfactory-related grievances, the judge pondered silently for a few moments. The baker, impatient to reclaim his coin-worthy smells, began to reiterate the injustice he believed he'd suffered. "Hold your doughy horses. I've made up my mind," declared the judge. Turning to the young man, he inquired about his financial situation. The youth reached into his pocket, revealing a handful of coins. "Sir, this is all the money I have in the world," he stated. "Give those coins to me," commanded the judge. The young man complied, placing the coins into the judge's hand. The judge, ready to deliver his verdict, began, "I've carefully listened to both your stories. It's true that the smells belonged to the baker, and it's also true that this young man took those smells without paying for them." The baker's face lit up with the hope of monetary compensation. He eagerly extended his hand, anticipating the coins. However, the judge had a different notion. "Hold your dough again, baker. Listen and listen carefully," he said. Shaking the coins in his hands for emphasis, "The sound of money is the best way to pay for the smell of bread," declared the judge with a twinkle in his eye. With that, he handed the coins back to the financially limited young man and instructed him to head home. The baker, now denied his anticipated payment, wore a scowl that might rival his sourdough. And so, the fragrant saga concluded with the curious notion that sometimes the clink of coins is the finest payment for the aroma of freshly baked bread. Click a video on screen now. If you enjoy this story, then like this video and subscribe this channel now. Also do comment your story or any suggestions. And don't forget to share.